The night that Jesus institutes what we call the Lord's Supper, if you don't know this, was the night of his betrayal. This takes place right before he goes to the Garden of Gethsemane, where eventually Judas shows up and betrays him with a kiss, and then begins the whole process of being taken for his trial and finally his crucifixion. So the Lord's Supper is right before they go off to the Garden of Gethsemane. Now the reason it's significant what's happening, they are eating the Passover meal of the Jews. Okay? And what we're going to see is Jesus is going to transform the Jewish Passover into his meal. Just like the Old Testament ritual of circumcision was transferred over to baptism. Okay? So they're eating the Passover. Okay? And what they have there, among other things, is unleavened bread, bitter herbs to remind them of their bitter experience in slavery in Egypt, and wine. Now, let me tell you the story very quickly. We can't spend a lot of time. But how did the Passover meal come about? Well, it's finally, you remember, and you just saw it the other night, Charlton Heston's going to lead the children of Israel out of Egypt. Remember? And he comes to tell the Pharaoh to let the people go, and of course the Pharaoh won't let him go, will he? And so then he sends all the different plagues, right? And the Pharaoh just keeps saying, no, 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 no. And finally, God tells Moses, I'm going to send the final plague. And believe me, he'll let the people go. Because the last plague was God himself was going to pass through the land of Egypt. And he was going to strike down dead all the firstborn of Egypt, of land, of animals and people. Now, the reason this is significant, I have to say this real quick because I can't spend a lot of time on this. What's going on behind the scenes, there's more going on in that story that meets the eye. Because in essence, what you have going on in the story of the Exodus is the battle of gods. The God of Egypt and the God of the slaves. And who do you think is more important, the God of Egypt or the God of slaves? Okay? And the God of Egypt was personified in the Pharaoh. Okay? And that's going to be important in just a minute. So anyway, he says he's going to come through and strike down all the dead. Strike down all the firstborn. But he was going to spare his people. How was he going to spare his people? They were to sacrifice a lamb. Now that should be your very first clue how this is going to relate to Jesus. Right? Because remember when Jesus shows up to be baptized by John the Baptizer, John says, behold the Lamb who takes away the sin of the world. They were to take a lamb, they were to sacrifice the lamb, okay? Take the blood of the lamb, the blood of Jesus, okay? They would take the blood of the lamb and to smear the blood over the doorposts and over the windowsills, okay? And when God came through the land, and he came to the blood of the lamb smeared on the doorposts and the windowsills, he would pass over that house and spare that house. Okay? And so that's what they do. And then they were to be inside the house when this was all happening. They were to roast the lamb and eat it. They were to eat the lamb, the Passover meal, standing up because they were going to be leaving real soon. Okay? They were to eat unleavened bread. Put no yeast in the bread because you're going to be coming out of here so fast there won't be enough time for the bread to rise. So we know it was unleavened bread. Okay? And to have bitter herbs to remind them of their bitter experience of slavery in the land of Egypt. Okay? And then also they had wine there. And they're standing up. And then God comes through the land and all that. Now, they were supposed to celebrate the Passover then all the time to remind them of God's deliverance of the people. That's the meal Jesus is eating with the 12 apostles. And that's what he's going to do. He's going to take the unleavened bread, eventually in this meal, and say, this is my body. And he's going to take the wine, and he's going to say, take, drink, this is the blood of the New Testament for the forgiveness of sins. So we're going to see. So that's the Passover meal that was celebrated, well, still celebrated by Jews, isn't it? The sad thing is Jesus fulfilled that, and the Jewish people are still having the Passover. Okay, well, that's all we can do. We have to move on. Number 2 then. It was Passover time. Having eaten of the lamb, whose death foreshadowed his own on the morrow for the sins of the world. What does that mean? It means the very night that the lambs were being sacrificed in the temple in Jerusalem for the Passover, Jesus was going to be sacrificed on the cross for the sins of the world and fulfill the symbolism of all those lambs being sacrificed in the temple. So it all came together.